Hello, good evening, and welcome to session 4 of the Entrepreneur Speaker Series presented by the State 48 Foundation. We are coming to you live from the Center for Entrepreneurial Innovations here in downtown Phoenix. And today's session is being produced by EIC Agency, so we want to thank both of them for making this possible here tonight. And we want to thank you for joining us live online, and for those of you joining us here in person, we're excited to have you. I'm Vanessa Ramirez. I am the in-game host for the Arizona Diamondbacks and the traffic anchor for 12 News for the morning show early in the morning, Monday through Friday, and also friends of the State 48 Fellows for many years. So I'm excited to be your host here tonight. If this is your first time tuning in, let me bring you up to speed. So the State 48 Foundation was born from a lifestyle apparel company, State 48. So let me share their mission so you learn a little bit more about what they're about. Okay, so our mission is to enrich and strengthen Arizona through thoughtful partnerships, inspired community action, and investment in the change makers of tomorrow. We started the foundation to be able to give back to Arizona's many communities, and as an entrepreneur-born venture, we wanted to begin with the startup community. And that's exactly why they started this series. They've invited some remarkable Arizonans like CEOs, entrepreneurs, and founders and experts to share their tips and stories with you to help inspire you to get that business going or to help get you to the next step. So tonight's focus and topic is legal and financial planning. So we have two amazing speakers joining us tonight. You'll be hearing from Talia Offord, an Associate General Counsel of a Fortune 500 company, and Ken Bauer, Chief Lending Officer of OneAZ Credit Union. And Talia will take you through the 7 legal steps for your new business. And Ken will teach you all about business financial planning through his expertise and personal experiences. So you guys are going to learn some valuable information tonight. We're excited to have you here with us. But let me remind you that the State 48 Foundation is giving away $10,000 in grants. So hopefully you've been following along so you get some of that money in your hands to help out your side hustle or your business. But you guys ready to get started? I hope you have your notes, you have your paper, or if you want to put your notes in your phone, that helps too. Let's get going with our first speaker, Talia. Let's go. Give her a big round of applause here in person. We got to get the energy going, because it just helps.
Having me. Thank you for that introduction. My name is Talia Offord, and I am an attorney. I happen to be the first attorney for State 48, and so I think that's why I'm here today. And so we've just kept in contact. I moved into I was started in private practice about 11 years ago, went to government agency, represented elected officials, and now I'm in-house at a corporation. And so we've stayed in contact over time, and that's that. And so I have been practicing for about 11 years. I've represented all sorts of different clients, fashion designers, corporations, insurance companies, elected officials, and I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to be here. This is probably the funnest part of my job, and I'm happy to be here today to share what I know. And so I think about, 320,000 years of innovation, $32 million industry. The 11th millionth patent was filed this year. And we're here to talk about entrepreneurship. And we're here to talk about how you can join this phenomenal culture and history of innovation that we have in this country. And I'm happy to be a part of that journey. And so as I was preparing for this presentation, all of these things were going through my head about what an entrepreneur might need to know. There are so many different things that may pop up. There's infringement, breaches, litigation, you have employment issues. And so I really spent some time thinking about how do I condense all of this down into 20 minutes so that an entrepreneur can feel comfortable and feel secure that they're doing what they need to do legally to protect their business. And so I started with my audience, entrepreneurs. And then I started with, what does an entrepreneur mean? An entrepreneur is a person who organizes and operates a business. A business is the practice of engaging in commerce, and commerce is the act of buying and selling. And so I thought, okay, at the base level, I need to talk about organizing and operating a business to operate in commerce. And so with that, I came up with this sort of layout. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to, in some places, speed through because we only have 20 minutes, and each of these phases is really their own seminar, and some of them 2, 3, 4 seminars a piece. And so we're going to hit very high levels, starting at the very first step of entrepreneurship. And I've broken this down into about 7 phases. So we're going to start with ideation. You come up with this great idea for a product or a service, and we're going to talk about the legal aspects of each phase. And then we will end with sale and wind down. But then there's a little trick. We're going to actually take sale and wind down out of order. Legal disclaimer, this presentation is for information purposes only. This presentation does not create a client-attorney relationship. If you want specific legal advice, you should consult with your attorney. And this, yes. So there we go. That's the legalese. Get that out of the way. Okay, phase one, ideate. This is not necessarily a legal phase, but there are some things that you want to do up front to really make sure that you're prepared going forward. And so as you're clarifying, and I know there is a session on this, as you're clarifying your who, what, where, when, and how, you're going to want to organize and memorialize this. And I suggest memorializing your answers in a bound paginated notebook with a section for witness signature and a section for witness signature as well. And this is because in the off chance that you are 5 years down the road accused of stealing someone's idea, you will have all of your notes in one place showing where you created it first. You will have your drawings. And so instead of drawing on a notepad or napkin, you will have all of your information stored in one place, and you will be able to prove that no, in fact, you were the one who did it first. So while this is not necessarily a legal step, ideation, you can do some things to protect yourself legally for going forward. And so at the very beginning, I recommend clarifying all of your thoughts and wishes and dreams, the who, where, what, whens, and whys into a notebook. And your notebook can also serve as a foundation of your business plan, which is not necessarily a legal document, but it will be, your business plan is something for your internal use, but it will serve as also foundation for your business plan. So it will just help you organize. After you have gone through ideation and after you sort of solidified what you're doing in business, product, service, whatever, you're going to want to pause and think about if this is the time to consult with legal. And I think it's important because I think a lot of times people are scared away from legal because it's expensive, et cetera, right? And so I thought probably it would be helpful to sort of talk about what attorneys do. So attorneys practice law, and the practice of law is essentially three things. It's offering legal advice, negotiating, reviewing contracts, and representing clients in legal negotiations and litigation. So that's essentially the practice of law. And so when we say consult an attorney, it's going to be for one of these three areas. You can find an attorney in many ways. Some of you are going to develop companies that are so large and so complex that you're going to want to eventually think about hiring in-house counsel. And that's when you would hire an attorney to become an employee for you and report directly to you, such as that's what I do now. I'm an attorney for one corporation, and that's all I do. I don't take on any clients outside of that work. I only work for that company. Some of you are going to want to have an attorney on retainer, meaning you find an attorney that you like that fits your needs at a law firm, and you're going to work with them on a contract basis. And so they'll bill you, you'll pay the bill. And so you don't have the overhead of benefits, health insurance, all that sort of thing like you would with an employee. You'll just sort of pay the overhead. You could look at the Arizona State Bar Association. There are some law school legal clinics that offer free legal advice for a cost-effective solution. And DIY legal, I want to spend a little bit of time on DIY. And DIY to me is do-it-yourself legal services, meaning online. And I'd be very careful not to mention any online names. And I won't answer any questions about any specific companies. But I just want to say proceed with extreme caution. And I will give you an example of why I say this. And so one time I had a client bring a contract to me and they wanted me to review it. And the original drafters were an online agency. And so I'm reviewing the contract. I'm going through and there are many things wrong. Number one, choice of law. The choice of law was not Arizona. It was some other state. That's a big no-no. If you're operating in Arizona, you want to make sure your choice of law provision is Arizona. There are certain indemnification clauses. Indemnity is if someone sues you or if there's any trouble, who's responsible for what, who's responsible for attorney's fees, who's responsible for costs, who's responsible to bring the lawsuit and be responsible for the lawsuit, and the indemnity terms and provisions were not favorable in any way to the client. So you just want to be careful. And so if you want to start out for cost-effective reasons with a DIY legal and use an online service, at some point, try and find a local attorney to at least review it for you. And it's still cost-effective because they're not drafting it. So they're not spending hours drafting it from scratch, but they are at least reviewing it for you to make sure that all the terms are not cookie cutter, but they are favorable to you. And best case scenario, you find a great online company and all the terms are favorable to you and you hire an attorney. It takes them like a couple of hours and you have that peace of mind that you've had a local attorney review your contract. And I want to say I'm breaking all the rules in this presentation, these slides. They're jam-packed with stuff. They're jam-packed with text. And they're very busy. And I want to tell you that, number one, I'm an attorney, I'm verbose, and it took me a long time to pare it down to what I have now. But also, these are going to be, they're going to serve as resources for you to take with you and to refer back. So I wanted to at least have extra information in there so that you could refer back later on. Consulting legal, a general counsel, if you get big enough, and when you get big enough, we're going to speak that into existence. A general counsel is someone who may not have all the expertise that you'll need, but they will serve as your central attorney to deal with all of the other attorneys. So if you don't have a litigation department, they might be the contact if you need to hire a law firm for like a lawsuit. And so these are all the different types of attorneys you might need at one point: real estate, a zoning attorney. Hopefully no one ever needs a criminal attorney. Corporate, intellectual property, finances, mergers and acquisitions. There are all sorts of different types. Before you retain an attorney, there are about 3 things you need to double check. Number one, what is their expertise? Do they know your business? Are they seasoned in the type of subject matter you're engaging in your enterprise? The rates. I'll say too, and the second and third one, you want to look at the retainer agreement and you want to make sure you're looking at rates. Some attorneys bill in 0.1 increments. Well, I'll say some attorneys bill in 6-minute increments and some attorneys bill in like 3-minute increments. And so you can imagine if an attorney is sending an email to you or for you or doing work, one attorney might bill no less than 6 minutes. And another might bill no less than 3 minutes. And so even though something might take them a minute or two, you're going to get charged as if they worked for 6 minutes worth of time. And so when you're reviewing your retainer agreements, you really need to read the fine print. If you have any attorney friends, have them take a quick look at it for you. But you have to read the whole thing. People always ask, what is the budget that they should look into for hiring an attorney? And 15 to 50,000, depending on what you do. And I say 50,000 because as you grow, as you build, as you make money, you want to start building up. So sometimes, and most times, entrepreneurs are not going to have 15 or 50,000 laying around to handle legal fees. But this is a goal. You want to start to stack that money and to pad your accounts with this. And so it's just like a good sort of frame of reference. Many reasons to retain attorneys: compliance, criminal liability, civil liability, and penalties. You want to avoid all of those. So we're going to take phase 7 now. So phase 7 is sale wind down. I think one of the most important things an entrepreneur can do is to plan to sell. So unless you are building a legacy company that you want to pass down to your children and your children's children, every entrepreneur is eventually, probably at some point, whether it's 5-10 years down the road, they're going to sell their business. And so you want to think way to the end, to phase 7, as soon after as possible after you ideate. And so some buyers, depending on your industry, they're going to want to buy certain companies only. Some buyers may only want to buy LLCs. Some investors may only want to buy corporations. And so you're going to want to think up front who your potential buyers will be and what type of company they might want. What type of documents are they going to want to see? What type of assets are they going to want to see under your purview? And what is the best business structure for your eventual sale? And what tax structures are beneficial to you? So as you're going through your process, sale is way far off, but I would like you to bring that up to the forefront and think about that. If you're building a company to pass on to your grandchildren or your great-grandchildren, then you can skip this step. But most of us aren't going to do that. Phase 2, protect. I'm going to skip through a lot of these slides because protecting your enterprise is a huge category, and I have a ton of slides in here for your review for later. And so for now, I really want to focus on this main slide, which is there are about 3 big areas of protecting your enterprise. 1 is business formation, what type of entity you form. 2 is protecting your intangible creations, such as intellectual property. Well, 4, protecting your tangible property, like your chairs and your cars and things, insurance, and also protecting your data. Those are the big 3 areas. I have a bunch of slides in here that everyone can review later. These slides will be provided to everyone, but these are the big areas. Ton of questions on business formation and the correct business structure. I want to hit this on a very high level and just say, because I know everyone has questions and I want to answer it this way. It's almost a checklist analysis, so you can feel comfortable and secure that you have the information here that you need to sort of do that analysis on your own time. But essentially, it comes down to the number of owners you have, the liability that you want to take on, whether you want to be directly liable or you want to sort of create a separate entity to be liable, and also your tax structure. But this is a really great chart that I found that I believe contains all the information you need, and the source is AZ Commerce, which is another good source of information. Intellectual property is a big deal. There are copyrights, patents, and trademarks. The United States Patent and Trademark Office is a great source of information. You should care about your intellectual property because it protects your brand, it protects your reputation, and it protects your investment. And so nothing is worse than putting thousands and thousands of dollars into your business and then having somebody rip you off and pass off their property as your own, or pass off their logo as your own and ruin your reputation. And so you really want to make sure you're focusing on protecting your intellectual property. And there are a number of resources here for protecting your intellectual property that you can review on your own time. I want to touch on trademark really fast. Make sure you're creating a very strong trademark. Generic, these have become generic because everybody used them as a pain medicine. So now aspirin's generic. The goal really should be to create a fanciful mark. A fanciful mark is basically something that's completely made up. So there's no one in the world that can say that it's theirs. Pepsi, Exxon are fanciful. Arbitrary is when you use Apple, when you use a word and it's attached to a good or service and there's no meaning. So Apple for computer software, there's no meaning. Whereas Apple for an Apple company, somebody who sold apples, it would be too generic and you would not get trademark protection. Before you form your trademark, search. And here's a good process to search. And for example, here's State 48 and here's their trademark registration. And so you can just go to the trademark office and you can look it up and you can see if somebody has already used it for your good or service. We won't cover patents too much because that's such an involved process, and I just recommend that you just go ahead and hire a patent attorney. I actually have a patent. I filed it in 2015. It just issued last year, and I wrote it myself, and it was a pain in the butt, and I don't recommend it. Insurance. Bottom line for insurance, hire a broker so that they can talk to you about all the different types of insurance you need. There's errors and omissions, cyber liability, property, business interruption, so hire a broker. Privacy, 60% of new businesses fail from a breach. So make sure you are concerned about your privacy. Hire a chief financial or a chief privacy officer if you can. Start a culture of protecting your data and privacy from the boardroom all the way down to the mailroom. And there's a lot here on governance or data governance here that you can review later. The one thing I want to say about your money is don't commingle, have separate accounts, because that can come back to get you. Funding, Ken will talk about that later, but essentially just know who you're getting into business with, research them, and read the fine prints of your agreements. Phase 4, launch. This is the fun time, but just be aware that when you're hiring the videographers, and you're doing the photo shoots, and you're hiring the caterers and everything, please get written contracts with all of them and make sure all the details of your arrangement are in those contracts. Operation is another huge area because that's essentially the area that you're going to be in. There's a lot here, and I just suggest that you go ahead and take a look at these slides later because I wanted to provide you all the information that you'll need to operate. But essentially, when you operate, you're gonna focus on people, places, and things. An employment attorney is super important. You might want to get one of those on contract. These are all really great tips that I have here that you can review later. Advertising, this is a huge area. When you're advertising, just make sure you're looking and reviewing all of the social media rules and regulations. Instagram has their own set of rules. They're different from Facebook's rules. They're different from Twitter's rules. So I just want to call that out to make sure you're checking with all of the different rules and regulations for each of the platforms. And be aware of taking pictures and taking music and that sort of thing. On Instagram, I know that you can select music that they have in their library. That's safe. Their promotions, their lotteries are illegal. And I suggest that you do your own research on this, but I want to call it out here. Whenever you're looking to do a contest or a lottery or a sweepstakes, every single state has different rules. And so you want to make sure before you offer one of those, a click to like, that's been deemed illegal in a lot of states, you want to make sure that you're just operating in compliance with your jurisdiction. And when you're hiring your gig workers, I touched on this already, but if you are hiring someone to do like an influencer, make sure you're tagging, if you've paid them, make sure they're indicating that somehow, because that can come back to get you. And I have a couple examples here of large companies who were found in violation of deceiving customers because they failed to disclose that they paid someone in exchange for a hashtag. Music, same thing. If it's not yours, you have to get permission. Some of the platforms have permission built in. They have licenses that you can go through. So just beware of using music. Compliance and risk. You're going to want to make sure you know your industry. You're going to want to make sure you develop compliance programs around the content of your industry. This is not the fun part of operating. This is not why you went into business, but it can keep you in business. And so it's very important to develop a culture around compliance and risk management. These are some people who might come for you if you're not compliant or if you're not focusing on risk. Your business partners, co-owners, investors, customers, landlords, employees, and anyone in the community. So if you have a culture of compliance, you'll know that you're protected. And that is my speedy presentation. Each one of those phases, there is a lot to cover, and I wish you all the best. Bottom line, in conclusion, hire an attorney, look at law schools. They have clinics, and a clinic is where the law students will practice law on you under supervision of a licensed attorney, and they will help you with different parts of your business. And ASU has a fantastic patent law clinic, and they have some other clinics. So I highly recommend if money is an issue right now, which that's essentially, nobody wants to pay for legal in the beginning. You want to put your money into your ideas and your services. And so I highly recommend getting connected with an attorney early on, because it can save you thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, and it can keep you in operation. And with that, thank you all for your attention, your captivating audience, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Can you hear me now? All right. Thank you, Talia, for that. And thank you for sharing your 7 phases with us and your legal expertise. And that disclaimer was a very nice touch. So thank you for that. And don't forget, you can refer back to this information later. You will have that given to you as well. So now it is time to meet Ken Bauer, Chief Lending Officer of OneAZ Credit Union. Come on up, Ken.
Thank you. Well, I kind of got a bad news, good news sort of situation tonight. So the bad news is our CEO, Kim, was supposed to be the presenter, and Kim went and got sick. And so you get the B team, you get me. So that's the bad news. The good news, however, is that I actually am an entrepreneur. I've done this several times. It's a passion of mine, and it's actually the reason I got into banking in the first place. And so as soon as they said, hey, can you go and fill in for Kim, which was like 24 hours ago, here's what we're talking about. I said, I would love to do that. And I really do love to talk to entrepreneurs. I love working with entrepreneurs, and it is truly a passion. So thank you for making the time and allowing me a chance to come up and speak to you for a few minutes. So we're going to talk a little bit about finances. And the first thing I want to say is I understand that everybody in this room and everybody online is at a different spot in your journey. Some of you are still in that ideation stage, and some of you are probably well along the way. And so some of the concepts we're going to talk about are going to be like, duh, I've done that 5 times, or I did that 5 months ago or 5 years ago. And some of you are like, oh, I didn't really think about that one. And so what we've tried to put together really is something that appeals to a wide variety of entrepreneurs. And so keeping that in mind, I want to talk just really quickly. That's me. I'm the Chief Lending Officer at OneAZ. So a little bit about us is we're all over Arizona. So we're actually celebrating our 70-year anniversary. So we've been around for 70 years. It's crazy. I've been here just under 2 years. I actually moved here from Colorado in March 16th of 2020. It was a great time to move when the entire world was blowing up. But we've got about 150,000 members here in Arizona that we serve, and about 500 associates. That's our name for employees, with 20 branches around the state. And we also serve about 10,000 businesses. So we are very active in the business community, and we really are working hard to grow that to a much greater number over time. So whether you're the smallest of small businesses all the way up to some very, very large companies that we work with, we can do it all, and we really enjoy doing it. A few of the businesses that we work with in the state of Arizona: Purple Girls, Mahalo Made, State 48, our gracious host tonight. So we love working with these companies and many, many more. So again, thank you for your partnership, Mike, and we love being involved with you. So let's talk a little bit about starting a business. Develop a business plan. So, and I apologize, I'm going to glance at my notes because I'm taking Kim's presentation, our CEO, and kind of adapting it to my own style and my own little tidbits. And so I'm going to glance down here a little bit to talk through. But some of the steps involved with starting a business, again, some of these are very, very basic, but developing a business plan, finding a mentor, managing cash. Oops, what did I do? Managing cash flow, opening a bank account, and really knowing your value are some of the things we're going to talk about. And it's funny, as Talia was giving her presentation, there's a lot of things that Talia mentioned that I'm going to talk about too. And I think that really illustrates the importance of what she had to say. And as an entrepreneur, and as somebody who's done this, and as somebody who's had to lean on legal counsel, every word she said is really, really true. And it should really be taken seriously. And I want to encourage you to do that. So talking about a business plan. So some of the things that you want to think through: mission, vision, and values. It seems really obvious, but I'm going to push that even a step further and challenge you to think about why you want to start a business. I mean, is this really something you want to get yourself into? Because it is not easy. It is truly a major life commitment, and something that is gonna be the most fulfilling journey, but some days it's gonna feel really, really tough. And so I challenge people, hey, really think about why do I want to do this? And think about, what problem do I want to solve? Is there a problem that you can solve by starting a company? And I think if you can answer yes to that is a huge push towards being successful, is solve a problem. If you can solve a problem and you can do it well, you have a really good chance of being successful. So identify what that problem is. What is your plan to serve customers? How are you going to compete? Are you going to compete on customer service? Are you going to compete on price? Are you going to compete on innovation? Those are questions that I would encourage you to flesh out and think through and have a good, clear answer, because knowing who you serve and knowing where you're going to find those customers, we're going to talk about that in a second, is really key to then drilling in on how you're going to go about selling and how you're going to deliver your product or your service. And that leads us to the marketing plan. That's really a big part of the marketing. A big part of the marketing plan is know your market, identify that market and understand it, and then say, what does this market need? What do I have that this market needs? And how much are they willing to pay for it? Near-term and long-term goals. So this is something that Talia touched on and that I'm going to reiterate is, do you want to create a company to sell it? A lot of entrepreneurs do, and that's a really, really good goal. But a lot of entrepreneurs also say, I want to create a lifestyle company. I want to create a company that allows me to work 30 hours a week someday once it gets stable and provide me X amount of dollars in income so that I can enjoy whatever, time with my kids or whatever that is for you. Every single person in this room and every single person online has a very different goal and desire for their company, whether it's lifestyle, whether it's stable income, whether it's building it to sell it, or whether it's passing it on to your family members at some point. Understand exactly why or what you want to do and why, so that you can start approaching things like the legal issues the right way, because it's never too early to start doing that. And speaking from experience, it's really hard to unwind some of those, for lack of a better word, bad decisions when you don't know where you wanted to go in the first place. You got to back up, fix the problem, and that can be pretty difficult. And lastly, industry trends. I really think industry trends and marketing plan really belong in the same bullet point, because if you don't understand industry trends, the market you're trying to serve, you've got some work to do. And so again, you really need to get your arms around that. Find a mentor. I'm going to add to this one also. So find someone who started a business, find someone who shares your values. This is a big one. Somebody who shares your values. Again, I'm going to talk a lot about mistakes that I've made. My second go around starting a company. I thought that we shared some of the same values, and a year and a half in, found that we didn't. And it was very, very difficult waters to navigate. And it created some serious rifts that ultimately led to the downfall of business. And so that second business really was why I got into banking. Is I went, wow, I have so much to learn. I made so many mistakes and I have so much to learn. And to me, the best place to learn was from other entrepreneurs who were successful. And so I thought, well, commercial banking is a great place to go work with entrepreneurs all day. And that was ultimately what led me into banking, which is what led me to right here tonight talking to all of you. So finding someone who shares your values and really understanding it is really, really important, not just for a mentor, but for a business partner. And then the thing that I was going to add here was a group. You're all in a group right now. Find a group of entrepreneurs that you can kind of lean on, that you can talk to, that you can help lift up, and that can help lift you up. It's really, it is really a sound piece of advice to do that. I think you need to surround yourself with people who are in the same trench that you're in, because believe me, there are going to be days where you feel like you are in a trench, and you're going to need a buddy next to you to help kind of pull you up and say, hey, you got this. Hey, did you think about this? Hey, I've been there. Let me help you navigate these waters. And so that would be my bullet point C on that one. So moving into financing and finance. So I'm going to speak a little bit as an entrepreneur, and then I'm going to speak a little bit as a banker and help you help maybe set some expectations around obtaining financing at some point, and really level setting those expectations, because I find that, in nearly a quarter century of doing this, a lot of entrepreneurs come into the bank with maybe a little bit, their expectations of what they can walk into the bank and walk out with are maybe a little bit out of whack. And so I want to help actually level set those and give you a realistic picture of what can be expected. And so as an entrepreneur, though, I can say that bookkeeping is like square number one. And just one of the biggest mistakes I probably made was, we started a company and we started small, and we had a few transactions, a few sales, a few expenses here and there. And I thought, oh, no big deal, I'll get to this eventually. How big a deal could it be that I've got 20 transactions in the first month we're in business? No big deal, I'll get to it. Month two goes by, and all of a sudden we have 50 transactions. Like, no big deal, I'll get to it. It's just 70 transactions. And meanwhile, that pile of invoices and that pile of receipts, et cetera, starts piling up and getting bigger and bigger. And that was a huge mistake. Not hiring a bookkeeper or getting my arms around bookkeeping right away on day one literally cost me almost 2 years of my life. And that is not a joke. It cost me financially in penalties, because filing tax returns means you got to have your books in order. And it took, I can't even tell you how many hours to catch up when 6 months down the road, I went, oh my gosh, I have this insurmountable mountain of paperwork that I need to get my arms around so that I can be compliant and so I can get my taxes done, et cetera. I was young, so I can give myself a little bit of a break. But boy, if there's one piece of advice I would ask everybody to walk away with, it's don't stall on that. Stay on top of your books from the day you start the company. You won't regret it, even though it's no fun. Nobody likes doing it, but it is so important. Hire a bookkeeper. They're cheap. They're a couple $100 a month, and they will save you a lot of headaches. AR. So we're talking a little bit about cash flow, and AR really, I think something that a lot of business owners don't understand is AR is. It seems like it's a really good thing. As a commercial banker and as somebody who's owned several companies, AR is actually a really bad thing. It represents money that is coming your way. But that's the key, is it's money that's coming your way. It's not money you have in the bank, and sometimes it doesn't come your way. At the end of the day, it goes away unpaid. AR is a use of cash. And that's the one thing to take away here, is AR is a use of cash. It is not a source of cash. It's not a source of cash until it's collected, and then it's no longer AR. So what I advise a lot of entrepreneurs to do is understand your AR and do everything you possibly can to shorten your AR cycle as short as you possibly can, because it's not, you can't do anything with AR until it's turned into cash. The second you turn it into cash, you can reinvest it into your business and start making more AR to make more cash. And so please take that away as one thing to keep in mind. Cut spending where you can. I'm going to modify this one a little bit and say cut spending where you should. There are areas where spending money is a really good thing. Spending money on marketing in the right way to the right markets with the right messaging is a really, really good way to spend money. It's all about what's your return on investment. So when I say cut spending where you should, I mean, where can you cut spending and not sacrifice the health of your business, not sacrifice the growth of your business or the goals of your business? Hire an accountant. That goes with A. Hire a bookkeeper, hire an accountant. Don't screw this one up. And separate business and personal. So Talia mentioned this as well, but I thankfully did not make that mistake, but I understand it can be a nightmare to undo that one as well. And so don't even go there. From day one, you have business and you have business accounts and you have personal accounts, and keep it that way. Really quick, so part of this presentation included a P&L statement. I'm sure that most of you are very, very familiar with a P&L statement, and so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. What I am instead going to do is say, this is one part of your business, and I would contend it's not the most important part. In my mind, the balance sheet is every bit as important as the P&L. You need to understand your balance sheet and what it has. So we talked about AR a few minutes ago. AR is the bane of a lot of businesses' existence because it doesn't represent cash until it's converted. And so understand what's in your balance sheet and how that balance or how the profit and loss impacts your balance sheet. Because ultimately, when you go to sell that business, the balance sheet is what's going to ultimately demand or create the price that you're demanding, and so or back up the price you're demanding. So, a couple things. Opening a bank account. So this is something you're doing obviously very, very early in the process. Banks versus credit unions. So really quick, both have a lot of really, really great things. And I will never stand up as somebody who's worked for banks and credit unions and currently works with a credit union. I will never stand up and denigrate banks. There is plenty of room for banks and there's plenty of room for credit unions in Arizona and in the United States as a whole. Banks serve a great purpose. Credit unions serve a great purpose. It's really more about what's important to you as an entrepreneur. And to a certain extent, it's about how complex you are. And so credit unions tend to be, well, first off, credit unions are not for profit. So we have a little bit more certainly a lot more of a community mindset when it comes to that. We exist to serve our members. We don't exist to serve shareholders or generate a profit. And so that's a big difference between us and banks. Where banks can kick my butt and kick my commercial banker's butt is when when a company gets really complex, credit unions kind of reach their peak. And there comes a point where I will tell my commercial bankers in the field, you need to advise that member is client in credit union land. You need to advise that member that it's time to move over to a bank who can handle their foreign exchange needs or who can handle some of the more complex treasury management and things like that they need. At some point, it generally becomes a disservice for a credit union. And so that's okay. And I'm a golfer. Know your fairway and stay in your fairway. When things get outside your fairway, it's time to move on. And so I think, though, for younger companies, for startups, for small businesses, a credit union is an amazing place to be because you're going to get a little bit more personal service. You're going to get a little bit more attention. and a little bit more patience, I think. In my experience, you're going to get a little more patience when you sit down and talk to a business banker. You're not going to feel too small. And so they're going to give you a little bit more of their expertise and time. Establish a relationship with a business banker, even if you're not there yet. So let's be honest, if you're a small startup company, you're probably not going to get a lot of direct attention from a business banker. You don't need it. It's okay. You need a basic checking account, maybe a basic savings account or a credit card, things like that. Just introduce yourself to the business banker in your branch. Find out who serves that branch if he or she doesn't sit there. Introduce them and just say, hey, I'm so-and-so, and this is my company, and I'm really excited to be here, and I'm really excited to meet you because someday I'm going to kick butt, and I'm going to be your biggest client, whatever. I think it's really important to start planting those seeds now, because there is going to come a day where you're going to need what the business banker has to offer. There's going to come a day where you're going to need a loan, or you're going to need some advice, you're going to need some more complex services. Plant the seeds now. Know your value. This is a big one, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with it. It's really tempting, and this is another place where I can speak from experience. It's really tempting to sell at a discount just to get a sale on the books, and really, in general, that's not a great idea. It's not a great idea to knock down your own value. You have a ton of value. You have something to offer. Don't be afraid to charge for it. You don't work for free. Nobody does, and it's not unreasonable to ask and expect for somebody to pay what you're worth. If it's worth it, they'll pay it. But it is smart to know where you stand in the competition and differentiate yourself. So you may want to compare prices with the competition, not to lower yourself to their level, but to say, I'm more expensive than the competition, and I clearly articulate why, so that when somebody makes that buying decision, they say, I know I'm paying a little bit more, but here's what I'm getting for it. Develop a pricing structure, charge what you're worth, etc. So with that, that wraps up the bulk of the presentation. We are going to go ahead and offer this up to anybody who is interested. We've got some really talented business bankers. We would love to sit down with any of you, not to sell you a thing. The goal here is absolutely not to entice you to come over to OneAZ. It has nothing to do with that. And really, it's more, I will, or one of my commercial bankers would love to sit down with you and spend time just simply giving you advice. We see entrepreneurs every day, and a lot of them. We've worked with a lot of them, and several of us have done it. And I feel like we've got something that of value that we would be more than happy to share with you. So with that, I really appreciate your time. I thank you and wish you the best of luck, and look forward to seeing you all on the big screen someday.
All right. Thank you, Ken, for that. And thanks for filling in. You did a fantastic job. So thanks for sharing that information with us. It's very valuable. But now we are getting ready for our Q&A session. So get ready with those questions. You can go ahead and put them in the chat right now. We're going to invite Talia and Ken back up on the stage, and then we're going to ask your questions, even if you have a few here in person too. Well, but we'll have some time to do that as well. So you guys ready for this part? I know tons of you have tons of questions. They were saying over 200 people signed up today for the session. So we're going to have a lot of questions. All right. Okie dokie. So the first one is for Ken. It says, I'm a nonprofit that currently uses a bank, but would a credit union be a better option?
Great question. Thank you. I would say that it's my answer isn't going to be, is it a better option per se, because really that's a decision that only you can make. I can simply tell you my perspective. So again, credit unions are also a not-for-profit. And so we have a shared mission and shared kind of value there that I think you would find some great commonality. And so I would start there and say, boy, if I'm a not-for-profit, I'm certainly putting a credit union really, really high up. As long as the credit union can meet your needs, as long as the credit union has the products and services that you need, and as long as you feel like they are on your team, then yeah, I absolutely think a credit union is going to be a great fit. If you're a large nonprofit, so now I'm talking United Way large, like big time, probably going to need to be at a pretty sizable commercial bank at that point. My guess is you're not quite at the United Way stage yet. And so we would love to serve you. Any credit union in the state of Arizona would love to serve you. And I think it'd be a great fit.
That's a financial question, but just the legal piece to tack on. I would vote for a credit union in that regard, because Ken mentioned it. You're going to get that one-on-one personal attention. So you're going to have somebody who's going to not be out for the shareholders, but they're going to be looking out for your best interest, and they're going to help walk you through the fine print. And that's the legal piece that sort of gets people in trouble when it comes to finances, is not understanding that fine print. And so if you have someone like Ken, who is you know that his fiduciary duty is to you and not a shareholder, you're going to be able to really understand and rely on his advice in walking you through that fine print and the legal in the documents.
Thank you. Okay, our next question is for Talia. Is there somebody you recommend that can help with trademarking, copyright, etc.? Sounds like you might be out of that arena now.
Oh, that's a great question. And yes, there are people I can recommend. I can pass that information through the foundation if that's okay. I did prepare a resource sheet. I didn't put any specific firms on, but I can get that information through the foundation. There's some really great local patent attorneys that you can work with, and I have a few in mind. So,
okay. Our next question, it says, is there a point you recommend where the whole sports team should come together? Bookkeeping, legal, insurance, broker, business, financial advisors, PR, etc.
The whole team.
They're meaning like everybody that I just named off. Like, is there a point when they should all come together?
I would like to have a dialogue around that question, but I'll answer it to the best of my ability, and Ken might have some feedback on that as well. I do recommend, and I didn't get into this in my presentation, but I do recommend the owners and leadership of a company having weekly meetings, and that would with company leadership. And I think in those weekly meetings where you want to make sure every aspect of your business is on the rails, that might be a good time for the owner to have a standing and running agenda where each of those is an item on the agenda. And that might be the point where they come together. I don't know if I answered the question, but if somebody wanted to send a follow-up through the foundation, I could elaborate on that a little bit better.
Yeah, I think if I understand the question correctly, what you're getting at kind of at the heart is collaboration at the highest levels. The answer is absolutely, no question. I can't imagine running my team, for example, without my leaders getting in the room, whether it's virtual or in person, and being able to talk about the problems that each person is facing and how we might be able to help one another solve those problems. And so if that in fact is the nut of the question, then there's no question in my mind that bringing those people together and allowing them to collaborate and allowing them to serve or not serve, but support one another is absolutely critical.
Thank you. So the next question is from Daniel, and this is for Ken. It says, I recently started a single member LLC with a business checking account. I have my first amount of income coming in. So excited this week. I'd like to start stashing money away for taxes. What's a good rule of thumb to make sure that taxes are covered when the time comes?
Put most of it away. No, I'm just kidding. A good rule of thumb. It's so hard to answer that question. So I'm going to just take a stab and say, if I'm, if I'm starting a company and not knowing what industry you're in, I'm probably 20% is probably where I'm starting. Here's the deal. At the end of the day, if you put away 20%, there's a good chance at the end of the year, when it comes time to pay up, you might have a little bit left over. There's so many variables there that it's a tough one. And that's why I say 20% is probably a decent rule of thumb. Would you agree with that? Yeah, but that's when you sell your company. Yeah, I think, yeah.
I love that.
We're good.
You like the number 7 too, huh, Talia? You're like 7 over there. You got 7 phases. We'll stick to the number 7. It's good luck.
Always trust the attorney. That's rule number 1.
All right. Our next question is from Tara. It says, what are the products that a credit union offers a small business different than the commercial bank?
That's a great question. I think the products in general, so banking is I'm going to use the word commodity. I hate to call it a commodity product, but the products themselves are kind of a commodity product, right? A checking account is a checking account. Where the differentiation mainly comes from is going to be how you feel when you interact with the credit union or the bank. Are you treated the way that you think you deserve to be treated? Are you given the service you want to be given? Is it priced fairly? Things like that. But from a product and functionality standpoint, if it were 10 years ago, I would say the banks really can whoop us in their technological abilities, in their complexity or ability to handle complexity. But credit unions have come so far in the last decade that we're getting pretty close. We're starting to nip at the bank's heels when it comes to those things. And so I think, product and service wise, we're on pretty level footing, certainly for small businesses, small and medium-sized businesses. And so for me, it comes down to service and price at the end of the day. Does that answer the question?
Great customer service is always key. All right, this is from Joy for Talia. What is the most common legal issue that blindsides new entrepreneurs?
Oh man, that's a great question. Oh. There really isn't one most common, but I will say the biggest legal issue now, sort of the sexiest legal issue, if I can use that word with legal, is data. So data breaches, and at my company, I have been assigned as a subject matter expert. I'm not yet, but I'm the responsible person for my group for data governance and data privacy. And I will say that 60% of businesses, when they have a data breach, they fail because of the financial impact. And the sort of industry speak around data breaches is it's not if you will have a data breach, it's when you will have a data breach. And so I will say early and often develop a culture of data governance around your business. And that means, and I have some tips in the slides, that means best practices. Do not let your employees use their personal devices for work. Have separate personal business devices. Do not allow on those personal devices, do not allow your employees to download apps. Do have training around what to click and what not to click, because all it takes is one person who you think is not important to your enterprise to click on something to infiltrate your system and to ruin everything that you've built for, that you've sat in these series for. Case in point, Target. Everybody remember the Target data breach a few years ago? Is a huge company as Target. The way that infiltration happened is they got in through the HVAC company, the company who does the heating and cooling for Target. They infiltrated their HVAC company because they knew that they would know the ins and outs of Target's system, because they have to run all the electric HVAC stuff. And they got in through HVAC and they found a back way to get into Target. So you need to understand who you're in business with, who your subcontractors are. When you're engaging and entering into your subcontractor agreements, you need to ask them about data. You need to ask them how they protect their data, how their company, how their employees use data. And so I will say data is the biggest legal piece here. But I will call out intellectual property, making sure you have adequate protection for all of your intellectual creativity, like your trademarks, your copyrights. That's also a big thing. But if I have to say the biggest, I will say data is the biggest thing right now.
Great information. Oh my gosh. Now I'm thinking about everything, right? You're like, oh my gosh, who's on my side over here? Okay.
Can I just follow that up really quick? I just want to tell this horrible joke about attorneys. So I feel like we're always the downer, like I feel like that I just brought everybody down. I just like totally brought the mood down. But the joke is sometimes the attorneys, we don't know if we're, if we're welcomed or if we're more akin to like that person who has to clean up after the elephant after the parade. Like, I feel like we come in and we're always just like cleaning up messes. And so we're like, we don't want to clean up any messes. And so don't do this. So I apologize ahead of time, but it's from a place of love. We want to see you succeed. And so we sometimes have to bring the bad news. But.
Girl, you're definitely wanted here. We need all the information you are sharing tonight. Okay, we have another question. This is from Zazar. It says, I recently created my business as an LLC. Should I consider applying for grants?
I don't know that I'm qualified to answer that one. Applying for grants is certainly outside. I'm a lender. You want to apply for a loan? I can help you all day. But applying for a grant is really going to be outside of my area of expertise. I would think if you're an LLC, though, you're not probably. I mean, when I think grant, I think not for profit generally, and so you may be up against a little bit more of a challenge applying for grants. But there are certainly. I mean, I do know there are grants tailored for entrepreneurs, and by all means, if you can get your hands on capital, you should get your hands on capital. I think back to when I applied for colleges, my mom was like, "Gosh, you're going to apply for every dang scholarship in that book, and I don't care if you don't need it, you're still going to apply for it because it's free money." So, free money is free money. Yeah.
And with that, the State 48 Foundation is also offering grants of $10,000. So you want to get your hands on some of that. So make sure you stick around at the end to get the information. Okay, so this is for Talia. This is from Daniel. It says, from a legal perspective, would you recommend insurance for a professional service business under $500K in revenue? If so, why?
Would I recommend insurance?
Mm-hmm. For a professional service business under $500K?
Oh, definitely. Everyone should get insurance. And there are so many different insurance products out there. And this might be I know Ken might want to I don't know if you might want to tack on, but there are so many different insurance products out there. I recommend hiring a broker. Find a broker that you trust and just sit down and have a conversation. You don't pay the broker. They get paid on their other side when they not sell, but when they offer the products and you sign up for the product. So I recommend hiring a broker. And a broker is just someone who is going to be able, who's going to know the insurance products available, and they're going to be able to say, okay, you need cyber liability insurance, right? If you have a breach, you want to be able to pay for that. But you need errors and omissions, meaning if you make a mistake in your operation, and it costs your company thousands or whatever, how many dollars, you'll have insurance for that. Everyone needs insurance, but go through a broker for those specific details to help find the products that are specific for your needs.
I'll echo a lot of what Talia said. So a lot of times people hear broker and they think, well, then I'm going to pay more. The reality is you're actually going to pay less, generally going through a broker. The broker, using a broker does not change your premium. It doesn't increase your premium to compensate the broker. The reality is the broker is going to spend a lot of time or know where to go to get you the best rate. So every kind of insurance and every kind of business is different, and insurance is written differently across different organizations, and the broker will know. If you're in this kind of professional services, these are the 3 insurance providers who are really good at that, who understand it, who are comfortable with the risks, et cetera, and therefore they price better. The other thing I would add is when it comes time to approach a bank or a credit union for a loan, insurance is absolutely going to come up. The question will be asked, and the expectation is that your assets, whatever those assets are, whether they're intangible, whether they're tangible, are going to be insured. And so it's sound advice to pursue insurance. Your business is worth it.
Thank you for that. Okay, and this next one's for Ken. It seems like Ernie has a couple questions for you. So it says, can anyone open an account? Do you offer Zelle for transfers? And what is the minimum amount needed to open a business account without fees? You got 3 of them there.
Questions. So what was the first? I'm sorry. The first one was,
can anyone open an account?
Generally speaking, anyone can open an account. You need to be, legally, you need to be a legal entity in the state of Arizona to open an account. So you have to have that paperwork in order. You need to be a resident of the United States and be able to prove that status. You have to have a taxpayer ID number, DBA, or trade name. So as long as you can check those boxes, sure, anybody can open an account. With a credit union, as a business, you need to operate in the state of Arizona. I assume you do if you're on this webinar. And so what was the second?
And do you, there's 2 more, but so do you offer Zelle for transfers?
We do. We actually just rolled that out recently.
Nice. Okay. And what is the minimum amount needed to open a business account without fees?
That I don't know. So we can absolutely find that out. I would encourage you to go to, if you're talking about OneAZ, to oneazcu.com, and you can get a breakdown of our fee schedules. I just don't have that knowledge off the top of my head, but I do know that our fees are absolutely competitive. And again, because we exist to serve our members and because we're so eager to serve the small business community, we make sure that those fees are among the best in the market. So you're going to get a great rate across the board.
Awesome. Thank you for answering those. So this one's from Robert, for you, Ken, as well. It says, how can someone get approved for a new business loan when they have not been in business for at least 2 years?
Yeah. So I apologize to everybody on the webinar and everybody here in person. I actually meant to address that when I was speaking. I kind of glazed over it because it wasn't part of the slides. It was more on my notes. But so this is where I was saying, there's a case to be made for kind of level setting. Bank and credit union financing is generally not intended for startup companies. It is really intended for mature companies with at least 3 years, typically 3 years history. It is very, very difficult. And I say this out of, to steal Talia's phrase, I say it out of love for entrepreneurs, because I know it's a tough conversation. I personally have, when I was a commercial banker, I've had this conversation. I can't even tell you how many hundreds of times. Banks, there's a reason that banks loan money at 4, 5, 6, sometimes 7%. That's because the amount of risk that a bank can take is really, really small. We cannot take startup risk because we don't charge startup rates. We don't charge startup interest rates. There are, without getting into all the technical details of it, there are different levels of capital, and those levels of capital are based on how risky it is and what the possible return is. My return on a loan, so if I make a loan to your business for 5%, my return is 5% minus what I pay for that capital. So let's say I pay 2% for that capital. My return is 3%. If your business is wildly successful, I still make 3%. If your business is not wildly successful and you can't pay me back, I lose everything. And so I use that example a lot to say, generally speaking, for a young company that's just getting off the ground, banks are not going to be your source of capital. Friends are, family is, your own money, your home equity could be anything besides bank capital is going to be more likely to be successful. And so that's a really long-winded answer. I apologize. Like I said, I intended to address that earlier, but and so for a bank that's been in business for 2 years or less, it's going to be pretty challenging, with one exception, and that's a business credit card. So a business credit card is going to be a little bit easier to obtain, and that's probably where I would say put your energy into, because that really is looking at your personal credit more than the business and the business financials to obtain that financing. So.
Thank you. So do we have any questions in-house? Ika?
Hello. Talia, could you talk about some mistakes that are made in the sale and unwind, and maybe the preparation that should happen when a business is looking to exit?
Sure, that's a great question. One main one comes to mind, and that is, so sometimes if you sell to an entity and you continue operating as, I don't know, a CEO or president or something like that, and you don't read the fine print, there could be a time where the fine print might say, if they sell the company and you're employed, you're the owner, or you're still working there, if they sell the company, you only get a certain percent. It doesn't matter how much they sell the company for, you get like a small percent. So I think I think that's more illustrative of reading the fine print of any sale agreement. So always look to see what's in there about profit, about liability. Some of it is another example could be that a company in a sale agreement, there might be a clause in your sale agreement that says they have X amount of years to come back or you're responsible for any liability or any harm that was caused going back 2 years, 5 years, or whatever after sale. And so you want to look at that because you think you sell your company and then 2 years later you're getting a bill because there is a lawsuit based on something that happened in the company and they're trying to stick you with the bill. So those are just two illustrations of read every single word. And if you don't understand it, go talk to an attorney. And that would be an M&A attorney, a mergers and acquisition attorney, or a corporate attorney, someone who assists companies in wind down and sales. Another mistake might be if you are in a partnership type of relationship and you did not create a partnership agreement, there won't be any terms on which partner gets what. And so there could be some litigation surrounding this person put in $500, this person put in $0, but the person who put in $0 wants half of the sale price. So if you're in a partnership with somebody, you want to make sure you have all of that in writing. So really all my examples, those 3 examples, are really surrounding reading the fine print and having agreements in place.
Okay. We have our next question. This is for Talia. What's the first legal step 2 or more individuals should take when they go into business together as partners?
Draft a partnership agreement.
That was easy.
Absolutely, hands down.
Okay, last question. This is from AC. It says, can you speak on non-compete?
That's a broad question. So it's an employment term. I also have really great employment attorney references if anybody wants them. But essentially a non-compete is when you hire an employee and you have them sign a contract. And these contracts aren't really, they're rare in Arizona because we are a right to work state. So if a business has an employee sign an employment contract, the business is essentially waiving that right to fire somebody at any time. So employment contracts are kind of rare in Arizona. I'm not an employment attorney, so this is very high level. A non-compete essentially is a clause in an employment contract that says, if you leave this company for whatever reason, you cannot compete, meaning you cannot work in this industry or you can't work in this subject matter for X amount of years after your employment. So for example, if this will never happen or if you're a sandwich shop, and this will never happen because I don't think a sandwich shop will ever make a sandwich maker sign an employment contract, because they'll want to fire them whenever they want. But let's just say they sign an employment contract and then that person quits and wants to go start a sandwich business. And they sign that, they can't start a sandwich business for at least 2 years after and from the date of their termination. So that's essentially a non-compete. And some of those clauses are illegal in some circumstances. So you want to be very careful about those. And that's all I'm going to say about that, because I do not have that expertise in that area, but I can tell you enough to say that they are illegal in some regards because some of them are overbroad and overreaching and they violate state law. So you would just want to consult an attorney if you're ever thinking you want to use a non-compete.
All right. Well, that does it for our Q&A session. Thank you, Talia and Ken, for joining us this evening for session 4 of the Entrepreneur Speaker Series. Valuable information for sure. You guys definitely shared a lot, and I'm sure people will be reaching out to you to get some more information. And don't forget, you do have that information as well that you can refer to back later. But I do want to remind you about the $10,000 grant money. So in order to be eligible, you have to watch 5 of the 7 live streams, which I'm hoping you've already done by now, 5 of the 7, in order to be eligible. And then you also have to fill out 1 of the surveys. And then at the end of the series, you have to fill out the application form. But here's the deal. After this session ends, you will receive a survey that'll pop up. So you need to fill that one out as well. I know you've already I filled these other surveys out, but the top 2 questions are important for each session. So we like to get some feedback and, what you learned from the session. So please fill those out. And if you do, you have a chance to win a State 48 gift card, $48 to purchase something at State 48. They have amazing items. So you definitely want to fill out those surveys. So that way, 1, you can be eligible, and 2, you have a chance to win that gift card. Okay, so the next session is Tuesday, September 28th at 6 p.m., same time, same place here at CEI. Thanks for having us, and thanks for EIC Agency for providing the live stream today, for making this all possible. Thanks for State 48 and the foundation and the team here for making this possible as well. And I hope you guys have a great evening, and we'll see you on Tuesday the 28th. Thank you again.